And again, apologize for the delay in getting started. Apparently, there's a lot of people who want to use their voice up at the State House today, so there was a long line for folks getting in, and the weather doesn't help either. We're here to talk about the bills that Senator Murray and Representative Handy have submitted for the Raising Rhode Island Coalition to make further progress in improving economic security for families receiving Rhode Island Works benefits. And those of you who were here last year will remember that the visual here showed that the Rhode Island Works benefit had not been increased in 30 years, in 3 decades. And thanks to the leadership behind me and others in the audience from the General Assembly, and also the hard work of coalition members, last year, for the first time in 3 decades, a benefit increase was enacted. And I know you can't see this yet. I know you may not be able to see the lines here, but what we're showing is that this year we're trying to get kids up to out of deep poverty, which is half of the federal poverty level. The poverty level for a family of 3 is $1,919 a month, which means half the poverty level is, see, I wrote down my numbers, is $959 a month. The current benefit is only $721, but that is up from $554 where it was stuck again for 30 years. So we've made progress, but we're here today to talk about raising the benefit permanently to at least lift children out of deep poverty by setting the benefit at half of the poverty level, and then importantly indexing it to inflation so that the value of the benefit continues over time. I'll just mention that the federal cash assistance program for seniors and people with disabilities, which is called the SSI program, is indexed to inflation. So we continue to give increases to seniors and people with disabilities who rely on that cash assistance program, as well as Social Security benefits. But federally, there is not a requirement that the benefits for children have a cost of living increase. But states can and should do that. And 2 of our neighboring states, or 2 of the New England states, actually do index the benefit to inflation. So I'm very happy to have a great lineup of speakers today. We're going to start with the sponsors of the bills, and I'm happy to introduce Senator Melissa Murray, who has been spearheading the effort in the Senate.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. This bill, most importantly, proposes to increase the amount of cash assistance for these families. And we are asking for a modest increase of 50% of the federal poverty level. And that is simply half of what the federal government says that these families need to survive, never mind thrive. So while it's a relief that the General Assembly finally raised payment rates to families last year, our state had previously allowed this program to languish without an increase of cash assistance or a cost of living adjustment for 3 decades. So while I am very grateful for last year's increase, we need to make a long-term commitment to continue to support these families and these children. An increase in cash assistance, as well as an increase in cost of living adjustment, will prevent the loss of value of the Rhode Island Works monthly benefit over time. We've all been hit really hard by inflation. Basic need items for families with young children have increased significantly, and when children live in poverty, it causes toxic stress for those children. Those living in deep poverty are more likely to have health, behavioral, social, learning disabilities, and they can carry those into adulthood. Children who live in poverty are more likely to earn less as adults and be unemployed more frequently. So the single most important thing that we can do as legislators is to ensure that our children's success and fight poverty. The other part of this bill that I would like to highlight is that it allows a parent to attend their second year of CCRI without additional activities. Currently, Rhode Island Works parents can only attend 1 year of CCRI without those additional activities. In the second year, the parent must add at least 20 hours a week of employment if she wants to continue her education while keeping Rhode Island Works benefits. That means that she is required not only to attend college while raising a family, but also work. Jobs that require a post-secondary degree or certification are projected to grow faster than jobs requiring a high school diploma or less. And workers with an associate's degree have a higher median weekly income and a lower unemployment rate compared with people with just a high school diploma alone. So if we are truly serious about having this program serve as a launch pad for independence, it needs to actually provide the supports parents realistically need to gain employment. The Rhode Island Works program is an investment in these 2,700 families, and is an investment in these children, and it's an investment in Rhode Island's future. Thank you. It's a pleasure to introduce the House sponsor, Representative Art Handy.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I wanted to touch on, I do want to underscore a couple of things, because I think that we need to continue to remind folks that we're talking about just getting to half of the federal poverty level. So think about that for a moment. Folks that, like me, that don't have the kind of stress that I've had in my past, perhaps, about, like, am I going to make my rent payment? My car needs $450 worth of repairs. I got to pick between that and this and this. Am I going to lose my job because of that kind of stress that the senator was talking about is very real and toxic. But again, we're talking about folks already at at half the poverty level. You're really talking about bare minimums at best. So it's so important, I think, that we continue to look at this, and the fact that we have let it languish so long, just until last year. And I do want to thank the leadership in both chambers and the governor for moving forward with that. But at the same time, we obviously aren't done, and I think that's what we want to look at. So I wanted to touch on one other piece of the bill that I think is very important, which is to change the lifetime limit from 48 months to 60 months. The federal requirement is 60 months. Folks might remember that goes back 30 years or approximately 30 years. Maybe it's 96, not 92. I can't remember. But and we're one of only 11 states that still have this 48-month limit. And one of the things I've been told repeatedly as a legislator, and I've been here too long, as I tell folks every once in a while, that we don't want to be an outlier. Well, we don't want to be an outlier. We need to repair that and fix that. One of the other pieces of it I would point out too is we do have a I think that, I don't think it's an emergency one, but essentially for folks that really continue to need it, they can apply for to continue to be able to stay on TANF. But think about the anxiety and fear that a parent's going to have in now coming up close to that 48-month mark. Now I've got to apply. Am I going to get this? Is this going to happen? Am I going to now be homeless? I mean, why are we even making people go through that? We should just continue, just make it simple, 60 months. Which is probably still too short anyway, frankly, but because, folks have multiple kids, different things happen in people's lives. They sometimes have to go back on it at later points in their lives when something bad happens. So I wanted to really highlight that problem that we need to fix with this. I don't think it's going to cost that much. I really don't, because again, a lot of folks are able to move on to that anyway. And honestly, I think it's just going to make things, it'll probably make things easier for government too, but importantly, I think it'll make things a lot easier for these folks that don't need another thing to deal with. So I want to again thank everyone for being here, and I look forward to us moving this forward. Am I introducing somebody? I don't know. Okay, Linda's coming back up to. Okay, thanks.
I just want to give another hand to Representative Handy and Senator Murray. They really have been extraordinary leaders, and it's not always easy to talk about poor people up here. So I just want to give you another round of applause. I'm next going to ask Dr. Beth Lang to come up, and she'll amplify on what Senator Murray and also Rep. Handy have referred to about the impact of poverty on children, the toxic stress that causes, and the long-term, the immediate and long-term impacts on kids living in poverty. Dr. Lang is a pediatrician, and she is an incredibly strong advocate for all children, but particularly highlighting issues around children who are living in poverty. So Beth, come on up.
Thank you. My patients are still unvaccinated, so I appreciate all of you who are supporting them, and I appreciate everybody and all the hard work you've done in this pandemic. The past 2 years have been stunning, and I would hope that we all continue to have grace and patience with each other as we're all on our own recovery journey from what the last 2 years has been doing. As has already been nicely said, my name is Dr. Beth Lang. I'm a pediatrician at Waterman Pediatrics Coastal Medical Lifespan. I'm the current president of the Rhode Island Medical Society and a past president of the Rhode Island chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I'll also say a past board member of Kids Count. In my 30-year career, I have seen vaccines eliminate some of our pediatric illnesses. I've seen new medical technologies save lives and genetic testing change diagnosis evaluations. Sadly, in my 30 years of practicing pediatrics in Rhode Island, I've seen very little improvement in our state's ability to eliminate extreme poverty by providing children and their parents the supports that they need to have bettering opportunities. And now COVID has stalled or even erased the little progress that has been made. In my practice, I still have patients and parents who go to bed hungry each night. We actually literally have Stop and Shop gift cards at our front desk that we hand out, and I'm a middle-class practice. Right now, I have patients who are living in hotels scattered around the state and children who cannot go to school at all because they're unhoused, or they need to stay at home to babysit siblings while their parents are looking for work or going to school. Currently, the social, emotional, developmental needs of Rhode Island children are at such crisis level that our mental health system in this state is overwhelmed. Children living in extreme poverty are hungry and malnourished, missing the key vitamins and minerals needed for proper growth and development. Children in extreme poverty are at more risk for anemia due to iron deficiency or lead poisoning, both of which affect brain development, which in turn adversely affects academic achievement potential. Children living in extreme poverty are at increased risk of developing asthma, made worse by poor air quality in their neighborhood if they live near a highway or a factory, or made worse by allergens if their housing, if they have housing, is infected by mold or cockroaches. Due to poverty-driven stressors, children living in extreme poverty have, as you've already heard, and I'll highlight again because it's worth saying again, have low academic achievement. They have behavioral problems, social and emotional development difficulties. Extreme poverty increases parental stress as parents try to care for their children while juggling the adult worries of housing, school, work, food, and finances, if any of these things are even available to the family. And parental stress impacts parenting practices, which increases the risk of child abuse. Extreme poverty is a constant trauma. When stress is strong, frequent or extended, children may experience toxic stress, and I'd like to expand on that word that was used earlier. Much like the rings on a tree that change in a drought, toxic stress is a stress experience at such a level that it prolongs activation of the fight or flight stress hormones in the body. Imagine if your heart was pounding with that adrenaline every minute of your day and night. That in turn directly affects and changes the development of a childhood brain. That leaves forever lifelong consequences of childhood poverty. The rings of a childhood's growth are affected by their poverty. In the study of epigenetics, we now know that when a child's biological rings are changed by toxic stress, this change is permanent, even passed through the genes to future generations. If you want to have some fun read, look at the generations after the potato famine. They can tell by genetic imprinting which one of your relatives were in the potato famine of last 2 centuries ago. Thanks to the proposed 3 changes of Rhode Island Works program, we have an opportunity and frankly an obligation to pass this important legislation to raise children and family out of extreme poverty. The governor's Rhode Island 2030 vision, with its foundation of education, productivity, and opportunity, starts with addressing all of poverty, but especially extreme poverty. We cannot successfully chart a course for the future of the Ocean State unless and until we address the dire economic, housing, and educational needs in our state today. We must increase the monthly Rhode Island Work benefit and support this increase with permanent cost of living adjustments to a level that better supports basic living needs. We must extend the lifetime Rhode Island Works benefit to 60 months. It's time to join our neighboring states who provide this life-saving timeline for needy children and families. And we must, with an unrestricted 2-year CCRI education, give families in deep poverty the knowledge and skills to be eligible for higher paying jobs. Early in my career, I heard a phrase that remains my daily guideposts as I work with and for children and families. Every adult was once a child, but not every child gets to be an adult. At this unique inflection point in our state's history, we have the responsibility and the resources to meaningfully impact and improve our state by lifting more children and family from extreme poverty. With the passage of S2316 and H7789, Rhode Island's children have a better opportunity of growing up safe, healthy, and educated, a better opportunity to be the adults that the envisioned Rhode Island 2030 needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lang. I'd now like to call up Lucy Rios, who's the interim director at the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And the coalition has been a strong advocate over the years for improvements in the Rhode Island Works program, both in terms of the structure of the program, the benefit amount, and then provides direct support to families who may come onto the cash assistance program because of domestic violence, providing counseling and support services to the women who are fleeing domestic violence. So, Lucy, come on up.
Thank you, Linda. And good afternoon, everyone. I am Lucy Rios, the Interim Executive Director at the Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And on behalf of our 4 full member agencies, the Blackstone Valley Advocacy Center, the Elizabeth Buffum Chase Center, the Domestic Violence Resource Center, and the Women's Resource Center, and our Task Force of Survivors, SOAR, Sisters Overcoming Abusive Relationships, I am here to voice our strong support for raising the Rhode Island Works cash benefit amount and for making needed improvements to the program to uplift Rhode Islanders out of deep poverty. These improvements include extending the lifetime limit to 60 months, as you've heard, and allowing parents to attend 2 years at CCRI to receive credentials needed for a job that pays a family-sustaining wage. The Rhode Island Works cash benefit amount is a lifeline many Rhode Island families, including survivors of domestic violence, rely on. The need for support from the Rhode Island Works program has not changed. In fact, it's only intensified during the pandemic. Member agencies serving victims across the state have seen demands skyrocket the past 2 years, with over 17,758 individual victims of abuse served and 87,543 individual services provided by advocates. In 2020 and 2021, we saw spikes in calls to our helplines and hotlines for a total of 31,529 calls. This represents more than mere numbers. This represents the many people experiencing domestic violence right here in our state who need our support. And we know that many victims are not able to come forward and seek support. Financial insecurity continues to be a main barrier for survivors on their journey to safety, with 99% of domestic violence cases including financial abuse. Survivors know all too well how the cost of living continues to rise, with inflation making matters worse. Many times, a main factor that keeps victims trapped in an abusive situation is a lack of funds needed to access basic needs: safe and affordable housing, to live free from abuse, to pay the bills, for health care, and for food for themselves and their children. The assistance we provide Rhode Islanders must reflect those increases in living expenses during the pandemic and beyond. Some members of SOAR have relied on this program as a lifeline for themselves and for their children after escaping abuse. And they have helped to advocate for improvements to the Rhode Island Works program right here at the State House, because they understand how such a program can help keep survivors safe and help them heal and thrive after experiencing violence at home. One SOAR member shared, and I quote, "I currently am a recipient of Rhode Island Works, and while it has helped me stay afloat financially, I find myself still struggling to meet some of the basic needs for my family. This includes housing, clothing, and even food. With the current amount, though the increase helped last year, I am not able to afford to buy enough food for me and my family. There have been times when I found myself struggling to provide food, and on those days, I wouldn't eat to ensure my daughters had enough. I also find myself looking for loans when my kids needed new clothes because I couldn't afford them otherwise. As a safety net program, Rhode Island Works should be giving families a fighting chance to be financially safe and secure, and not keeping them in a state of crisis. As we emerge from the global pandemic, we must ensure victims of abuse and their families are not left behind. Survivors face both short-term and long-term impacts from two public health crises, domestic violence and COVID-19. The benefit increase last year helped thousands of children and families who were enrolled in the Rhode Island Works program, but they're still living in deep poverty. By raising the monthly benefit to 50% of the federal poverty level, we can deepen our commitment to supporting families. Raising the Rhode Island Works benefit and making these other needed improvements to the program is more than a financial issue. It is an equity issue and an anti-oppression issue. The burden of domestic violence does not affect us all equally. The lifetime prevalence of experiencing sexual abuse, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner is 48% among Indigenous women, 45% among Black women, and 57% among multiracial women living in the United States. These same communities are also disproportionately affected by poverty, oppression, and a lack of access to resources. We can build a better and safer Rhode Island for everyone, including victims of domestic violence, and we must, because it is just. To end domestic violence in Rhode Island, we must interrupt systems that prevent us all from surviving and thriving, and step up to care for our communities. By making these improvements to the Rhode Island Works program, we can strengthen support for all Rhode Islanders and ensure that those that are most impacted by violence have the means to begin to build their lives free from abuse and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, and I really appreciate you calling out the equity need for investing in Rhode Island Works program. We can have another seminar on sort of the history of why the cash assistance program for women and children is not, not funded properly, but also that the long history of why we were, those moms were not treated the same as other workers in our society. So I next would like to call up Dr. David Upegi, who is a science educator at Central Falls High School and who graciously agreed on fairly short notice to come and share with us what he experiences in terms of the impact of poverty on children's learning. So thank you.
You shouldn't applaud yet. You haven't heard me yet. I'm not known to be brief, but this is an issue that's straightforward. Dr. Lang brought up the physiological impact of poverty on children's minds. And I can tell you that every day in my job, I get to experience that. I get to sit with those children, some of those children that haven't eaten, that don't have a house to go to, or they don't have a home to go to. And I can assure you that as a society, we must do better. Investing in these children is an investment in all of us, because undereducating these children not only harms them and their dreams and their talents, but it's robbing all of us as a society from those dreams, from those hopes, from those talents. Who's to say that in my classroom is not the next Sonia Sotomayor or Dr. Lynn Margulis or Albert Einstein? Those children deserve a right, and therefore we must fund them, and we must provide all of the resources that they need in order to thrive. We can do this. We have the means to do it. And so, as I always tell my students, because we've been given opportunities, we also have responsibilities. And in that sense, See, I was brief this time. I think that this is just a logical step to do. We take care of those that need it the most because higher educational outcomes are also correlated with all of the positive things: less incarceration rates, lower incarceration rates, better health outcomes, more income, and therefore more taxes, more revenue. I mean, everybody should like this, right? We invest in people that are going to make more money for all of us. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just a straightforward bill that we should be backing. And we really need to remember, again, that those children that need it the most, we should be offering the most because we want those dreams and we need those talents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And before I invite up our new Executive Director, Wayona Nelson Davies, I just want to talk a little bit about the money, because we're all talking now about how much money there is from the ARPA and how the state has additional general revenue. But I just want to point out that Rhode Island gets a $95 million federal block grant called TANF that supports the Rhode Island Works program. And over the years, the state had also put in general revenue dollars to supplement the $95 million that we get in federal funds. The state stopped putting a penny of our own taxes into the Rhode Island Works program back in 2007. And over time, the amount of money from that federal block grant, the $95 million, has also continued to drop. In 2020, Rhode Island spent only 14% of that $95 million on direct benefits for the families. And supporting families is the key role of the Temporary Assistance to Needy Families Act. So we have been squeezing out the kids and using those federal funds elsewhere. A big chunk goes for subsidized childcare for working families, which is great, but we don't put a lot of state dollars into childcare either. So we can't just be looking for supporting the families on cash assistance and supporting working families and the workforce that provides childcare services out of that same pot of money. So we're not even looking at asking for a penny of general revenue. We're just looking to have more of that $95 million that is supposed to be dedicated to kids, allocated to them to improve their current economic security and their future economic security as we help the parents gain more skills. I just wanted to point out that in the back there's a fact sheet from Raising Rhode Island that you can pick up if you'd like. And I want to thank everybody, the legislators, for coming here. I know that the House has an ethics training at the same time. Otherwise, I know people have stopped in and said, sorry, I can't be here. But now it's my pleasure to close us out, invite up Wayona Nelson Davies, who's our Executive Director, and she'll say some parting words, and then we can all move on. Thank you all.
Thank you, Linda. As a former legal aid attorney, I'm really happy to be in this space because I've represented children and family gain access to benefits, and I know how needed it is for them. So thank you all for being here to support us and kick off this campaign. A special thanks to Senator Murray and Representative Haney. Thank you so much for your leadership on these bills as we continue to push, because we have to continue to push to lift children and families out of deep poverty and invest in Rhode Island. And I really want to thank Dr. Lang, Dr. Becky, and Luis Rios. I'm getting used to the names. I'm going to get there eventually. Thank you for all your work. Thank you for your advocacy, and thank you for your support. And I always like to end with a call to action. We need more people to join us in this charge and to join the Raising Rhode Island campaign. And the way you can do that and spread the word, individuals and community organizations can join this campaign by signing up at the raisingrhodeisland.org website. You can learn more, and you can sign up your name to be a part of all of the organizations and individuals who are pushing for this. And on that note, I think that brings us to the close of our kickoff campaign. So we like to end with let's go. It's sort of like our charge this year. So I encourage us to let's go and get this done. Thank you.